Ladies and gentlemen, thanks once again for the next and new edition of Nisarg. We are very happy to have you, and today we have a very special guest and an expert as well, and he's from the medical profession, Dr. Partha Dapke. He's from Hanover, Germany, and he has been here for many years now. He's, as I said, a professional, or by profession, he's a doctor. He came here for doing further research into the medical field. He will explain himself, as always in Nisarg does, so that it's clear from you from what exactly he has worked upon and his life story. It's a very inspirational one, and that's exactly we want to actually do it. And so we look forward to that, and thanks for your feedback and comments we always receive, and it always helps us to improve. And also we look for different fields actually to bring you from different professions of Indian diaspora who are in Germany, who has mostly in the northern or the jurisdiction of the Consulate General of India in Hamburg, the distinguished personalities we would like to have a dialogue and interview with, and so that you can also get to know those personalities, and maybe one or other working in the same fields, or students who are interested to actually work, or you want to come to Germany and study, so that you can also contact them. And in that context also, the expert of today, he's himself is a DAAD, German Academic Exchange Service Ambassador, and also he has done a lot for the students and is continuously doing and answering queries and doing a lot of activities, supporting them. And he has different phases. He's also the president of the Indian Association Hanover, has been active member in the past, now taken the responsibility to the president of one of the very active and dynamic diaspora association in the country, in Germany. So you can see, apart from his profession research, also voluntarily he has been doing a lot to the diaspora and students. So join me. Let's go through his life and history, and also what he is up to and where he would like to travel to, so we can all hear, and also maybe some of you can follow his full steps, and others who would like to really learn from more can contact Dr. Partha Dapke. Dr. Dapke, my dear friend Partha, thank you very much for joining us in this Nisarg. Thank you for your time, and thanks for accepting us our invitation. This is, as you know, from an initiative from the Consulate General of India, Hamburg, and it's been going well. As you have seen also the video of the earlier guests and experts who have been part of this Nisarg. And today we are very proud and happy to have you in our program. So to start with, Partha, I would like to ask you, how was it? It has been, there are a lot of connections actually for you to Germany, also from your family, and German as a language per se. But kindly take us through from your childhood, little bit, let's say till your youth stage, whether that time Germany played a role, or that at that time Germany was something in your dreams, or was nowhere, or even in your profession, in your school time, whether you ever thought that you will be in the profession as of today. So it will be very happy to hear you from your childhood and till your youth, how it was, and where actually the current life did play a role at that part of time. Please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bala. Thank you very much for inviting me today to this Nisarg session. I'm very happy to discuss with you here today. Very interesting. I will start with an interesting note that actually my connection to Germany, you can say, started right before I was born. So my mother traveled for the first time to Germany in 1992 while she was pregnant with me. So you can say, although I cannot remember anything of it, that was my first trip to Germany. In a way, in a biological way, yes, because it's a living organism,
Right.
the fetus. So this was my first trip. Of course, I don't remember much of it. I don't remember anything. But that was how, as you rightly mentioned, we have a family connection to Germany. My mother teaches German at the Goethe Institute in Pune. She has been teaching German for the last 29 years now. and now she manages the Bildungskooperationsdeutsch program for the western part of India in Goethe Institute. And my father also, for several business tours, he has been to Germany. He has had several German clients in his business. So that way, there was already a connection before I came here. And I started officially learning German actually only after my 10th standard. So I did one course in the Goethe Institute, the A1 course of the German language. And after that, actually, I did not do any courses, but my mother taught me German at home. So interestingly, in 12th standard, I substituted maths. I took off maths from my from my subjects, and I took German, which interestingly paid off very well in the results. So that is the story of how I got in contact with Germany or German as a language. After my 12th standard, I visited Germany just for a trip. After the entrance exams were over, the medical entrance exams, and I spent a couple of weeks in different German households. So that was a very enriching experience, a new thing as I was coming out of India for the first time. Um, and since then, I've been to Germany 3-4 times. So before, of course, before I started my PhD, I did one clinical elective in Hanover Medical School with the same professor with whom I did my
Right.
PhD in the Department of Pediatric Metabolic Medicine. This was in the final year of my MBBS, where I did in Manipal. And then I came to Germany. I got selected for the Nobel laureate meeting, which takes place in Lindau. This was the year 2014. And this was a fully funded scholarship by Department of Science and Technology. And following that, in 2015, I got a research fellowship to do 3 months of research work in the Ludwig Maximilian Universität
Mhm.
in München. This was also a very good experience for me. So I could do experimental work, which was very interesting for me as I have a clinical background. So it was something different. And then finally, I started my PhD in 2016 in Hanover Medical School and the University of Veterinary Medicine, Hanover. So that is how my journey to Germany has been, and now I'm here for 4.5 years.
So I
So
think basically when you said about especially this program Lindau, I remember it's very highly competitive. I know that because I mean, who would not dream to meet so many Nobel laureates in one podium or one platform? Actually, I would say, and I think this is dream. Um, let's say reality for many young people, youth who would like to really hear, not only hear, I mean it's like you just a party with friends, you are there with them, so all the time you are there, and so you just can jovially share the breakfast with them and ask them questions which you never really trust yourself to ask in a big conference, isn't it?
absolutely, you're perfectly right, and I would like to share an anecdote, an incident that happened over there, so that you can actually realize how much fun it was. So actually, all of us, we were really, especially I was just an undergraduate medical student that time. So we have that hindrance. There's an inhibition as to how we are supposed to speak to such big scientists who are Nobel laureates. But it turns out that they are really cool. I mean, they are really very friendly. They really speak nicely to you. They explain things. They explain things to us in a language that we would understand.
Mm.
So not that it was very difficult, because for a person like me, of course, I was at a very young stage,
Yes,
an
yes.
undergraduate stage. Of course, I don't understand much even now, but that time it was even less. And there was an incident where we had a barbecue in the evening in Lindau. We were sitting nicely on the banks of the Lake Constance or the
Mhm.
Bodensee, and I was talking to this Nobel laureate, Sir John Walker from the UK, and he worked in mitochondrial metabolism, so which has been a dream, like a fantasy for me right from the first year of my medical school. So I was speaking to him, and he just calmly told me, "Call me John." I mean, of course, I
Mm.
was calling him Sir, as we
Yeah, of
do for
course.
as
Yeah.
any Indian does. So I was like, "Yes, sir," and he's like, "Call me John," and I was shocked. I mean, I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine a Nobel laureate telling an undergraduate 23 or 22-year-old student that call him by his
Uh,
first name. So this was something really surprising. I still couldn't do it, by the way. I kept calling him
Same.
Sir or Professor Walker. That I couldn't do, but then it was also very interesting that he actually accepted my request of having lunch one-on-one with him the next day,
Oh,
where I could spend 1.5 hours exclusively with him one-on-one while having lunch and talking to him about his research, learning from what all he did in his life. And I think this was one of the most special moments of the Lindau Nobel laureate meeting on physiology and medicine that year for me.
maybe some points as a defining moment, one call it, right? Maybe some things you probably have
Yes,
picked up,
absolutely.
which still you today you remember because of that you are doing like that. No, maybe.
Yes, you're perfectly right. I mean, and I think one of the biggest most, of course, apart from the science, they are great scientists, they are great clinicians or physicists, or the humility. And if those people can be so humble, then we should be also.
True, absolutely, you're right. Patal, just going back a bit, during your school days, how was it? Was something biology per se was always your field, or it's not something that you are so, let's say, interested and later it came, or how was it? Or there was some motivation within the family, friends, or people whom you know that you always wanted to be a doctor by profession, or how was it? Can you just paint, let's say, your school days?
So that's a good question, actually. Very interestingly, till I was about 9 years old, or no, even more, till 11 years old, I really wanted to become an automobile engineer. So my father is a mechanical engineer who worked a lot in the automotive and manufacturing industry. My uncle is an automobile engineer, so that always fascinated me, working with cars. But then what was a completely life changing moment for me was when I went to the Kanha National Park with a group called Pugmarks. This is in Kanha is in Madhya Pradesh, and that time I actually experienced wildlife for the first time in an open forest, and that is what led to my interest in biology. So first in wildlife, and this interest actually eventually evolved into genetics and biochemistry. And actually my family, there are no doctors,
Yeah.
so there are no doctors in my family. Only my aunt has done she was the head of microbiology in one of the colleges in Pune,
Yeah.
and my grandfather was a chemist, so he worked on aspirin and salicylic acid. But apart from that, there is absolutely no connection to medicine in my family. But this time going to Kanha National Park was the defining changing moment for me when I got interested in biology. And then the interest evolved going into genetics and biochemistry and finally medicine. That is how the journey was.
Okay, so let's put it other way around. If, because we all know how the competition for medicine is, it's same everywhere. Even in India, because of the population, it's even higher. But in Germany also, it's not different. You have to be the top 1.0. You need to get for the school, which is like rarely 2-3 people in whole of a place can get actually. So the competition is everywhere. It's the same in different context of how many. So if you would not have become a medical professional, what would have been your next choice?
That's a very interesting question, actually. So I have two answers for this. And firstly, I should really thank my parents for the great support. My parents and my sister have been very supportive of whatever I've wanted to do. So if I would have still been in sciences, I would have probably gone into genetics or wildlife biology, which were my interests as before. However, an alternative profession for me could have been the arts, where I would have taken up languages, political science, maybe, and I would have continued playing the tabla, singing, and doing dramatics, because those are also activities. I have been learning tabla since I was in the sixth standard. So I'm quite inclined towards music and dramatics also. So that would have been a completely different line of career, which I might have chosen had I.
I think you are not far away. You have chosen Hanover as the right destination. You know, we have one of the very let's say, renowned university of music in Hanover, actually.
Yes.
And so your passion certainly, and I mean, we have to hear more about your tabla. I think that's still missing, but also political science. I mean, yeah, we are more than happy if you can join politics also. I mean, still you can do it. I mean, there are many doctors who are also politicians. There are few
Yes.
who are also now in the news very often regarding corona as well, who are no. So anyway, very interesting, Partha. Certainly, I think that's something. It's really. So let's come to, you had your 12th, you had in Manipal. Manipal, we all know, is one of the, let's say, leading and an establishment that is has a high respect, especially also at that point of time. Now, Manipal has grown into an university. It's really big, and all fields are there. But for a long time, it started as basically a medical college. Yeah, Kasturba Medical College.
Mhm.
So medical profession was, till today, even Manipal is always said, immediately anybody who is asked, they recognize medicine because of that, what it is. So tell a little about your time in Manipal. What is something that you have learned from there, something you still follow in life? How was it, as a young medical graduate? It's always a lot of questions about ethics, because medical medicine is a profession which is very closely, let's say, finely, you need to tread with ethics as well, all the time.
Mhm.
Because that's something, compared to other professions, I would say, one is medical profession, the other one is the um, lawyer profession, or let's say the legal profession. These are the two professions, to my understandings. You cannot separate your profession and ethics. It somehow
Mhm.
both will go hand in hand. So how was it? What are the things you learned during your time in Manipal generally, and is something that shaped you? If may I put your question like that?
Mhm. Yes, thank you very much for bringing this up. So, Manipal Kasturba Medical College specifically has played a big role in my life. That has no doubt shaped several values that also were imbibed in my childhood, but let's say they gotten strengthened in Manipal, and some values were added to the list also. Firstly, an excellent institution, I have to say. So, as far as the medical teaching went on, whether it was theory or practicals or clinical departments, it was all fantastic. Absolutely. Not because I am an alumnus of the college, but I would really say, even looking at it objectively. So, I had a great learning experience. Here, I would like to specifically mention one of my professors who
That's right.
later was the dean of the college, Professor Dr. Pragna Rao. She was the head of biochemistry. She is an MD PhD, and she was the one who told me that I could pursue a PhD after MBBS. So, absolutely, all credits to her, along with my parents, to that I have come a little bit 2 steps ahead in this journey. So, this is a tribute to her, absolutely. Um, Apart from that, Manipal gave me an environment where I could do a lot of things. So, apart from the normal medical education, there was research. I could actively be involved in a lot of research. So, I would like to say humbly that I was the recipient of 3 times consecutive awards from the Indian Council of Medical Research for the short term studentship, where I could do different types of projects. Which involved, one of it was designing an app with the IT department of the engineering college to diagnose mitochondrial disorders. One was a clinical project in the microbiology and the ICU departments, and one was a very experimental project in biochemistry. So, apart from this, I got some experience in animal experimentation and ethics and statistics, things like this. So, this was again very interesting, analyzing systematic reviews, etc. Um, then the third point is that Manipal gave an opportunity for everyone to really do something in their extracurricular activities. So, for example, more than actually, I kept playing the tabla in Manipal, but more than the conventional classical tabla, which I also did, I played a lot of jamming with a friend of mine who played the guitar. So for 4 years at least, we had several events happening in Manipal. And other than this, I was involved in dramatics, so events like Mad Ads and Mime and so on and so forth. So this was a very enriching experience, all the cultural activities and the literary activities. Manipal gave me, fourthly, a very good platform to develop some organizational skills. So I was able to, with the guidance of professors, start a research forum at the university level, also be involved in starting a research forum at the medical college level. And we were able to start two Indo-German conferences. So one was started while I was in Manipal. This was the Indo-German Convention of Lindau alumni. And the second one, the Indo-German Metabolic Meet, which actually started after I came to Hanover. So, and these are still going on. The conferences still go on every year. In 2020, unfortunately, because of the COVID crisis, we were not able to have those conferences, but we are hopeful that maybe this year we can do something. So this was an excellent platform to develop some organizational and leadership skills. And I would also like to say, last but definitely not the least, I met my life partner in Manipal. So Tanya Joshi. So she studied in the dentistry college in Manipal. So yes, that was also, I have to say, that was a big part of my life in Manipal as well. So I think Manipal gave an all-round experience to all of us as students over there. So I made great friends, had amazing teachers, absolutely fantastic mentors. And I think really one of the reasons why I came to Germany to do my PhD is a big impact from Manipal, how
Okay.
it shaped my life.
Yeah, you
So yeah.
summarized very well. Wonderful. Because I asked this is also, as you know, Leibniz University Hannover also has a very strong cooperation with Mahe, and so we also have a really very positive, energizing cooperation. Thank you, Partha, for that. So let's get back. Why I'm asking is that let's say also for the so-called prospective students who would like to come to Germany, study, how was it? What was your preparation like when you applied for your PhD? Was it the first PhD that you applied for and the only one, or you applied for other countries, or your destination was always Germany because of certain other things which you explained before as well? What was it gone in the whole preparation? Because we also know that you have been DAD Young Ambassador as well. So how was it like, so that if you can give a bit of, let's say, I would not say advice, but something that, people can look upon, say something they have to be following, those kind of things, that if they want to apply for especially institutions in Germany, what is expected?
Right. Yes, this is, I would say, in retrospect, the journey of applying to PhD in retrospect now started when I was in the third year. This was a time I got a chance to present my one of my papers at the International Conference for Inborn Errors of Metabolism in New Delhi. And this is where doctors and scientists from about 15 or 18 different countries were present. And one of them was Professor Dr. Anip Das, my mentor
Right.
here, my PhD supervisor, Dr. Fatar. He was present at the conference. He also gave a talk. I had a very good chance to interact with him over 3 days. I actually, this was also some advice from my parents, which I believe was very nice till today. That they told me I should carry copies of my CV and my publication, so that if I meet someone,
One.
I can actually give it to them and I can interact with them, if I can do a clinical elective, because Manipal was allowing every student to do 1 month of clinical elective in the final year. So this was also one of the aims of going to the conference, other than presenting my paper.
Right.
And I was very fortunate to meet Professor Das in the conference. He was very nice. Over the 3 days, we had a lot of discussions. He saw that I could also speak German, and on his return back to Germany, I immediately, when I emailed him, I got a response that yes, I could do a clinical elective. And this is where the journey started. So about 7-8 months later, I came to do a clinical elective in January, February next year in 2014. So the conference was in 2013 and I came here in 2014. And I had a fantastic time in the department of Professor Das for 1 month. And this is when actually he even sort of offered me that I could do a PhD after my MBBS was completed in his department. So I kept in contact with him over the next 2 years. And then we again met in 2015 when I had come to Munich. We discussed about what projects were feasible. He arranged funding for me, and this is how we worked towards getting my admission in PhD. Now, what was important in this? There are definitely a few points important for every candidate, and I'm sure the list will be bigger when other people who have also done a PhD in Germany can add to this. Firstly, building network. So, contacting professors is extremely important. If it can be done in person, that's wonderful, but it may not always be possible. So, we have email, we have LinkedIn, we have several platforms which are available. I would really encourage people, and this applies, I think, to any discipline. It's not only medicine, it may apply to engineering or the natural sciences like physics, chemistry, biology, biotechnology, for example. Please attend conferences. This is one thing I would really say. Attend good international conferences, because that is the place where people will come of those field that you are interested in. And this is something, an excellent networking opportunity. Secondly, don't be shy of contacting professors. A lot of time we hold ourselves back. So something that I mentioned in the Nobel laureate meeting, that I was myself, I had inhibitions as to how to talk to Nobel. A lot of us go through, especially as undergraduate students. So it's nice not to have these inhibitions. Talk politely, talk nicely, and this will go a long way. Um, being very professional. Uh, there are people who don't have professional email IDs, and this is a big factor when it comes to applications. So, for example, if an application is sent by the name of, if it's XYZ underscore rocks something something at gmail.com, the professor is very less likely to read this email, because it might go into spam, and secondly, they don't think that the candidate is serious.
Sir.
And also, while starting the emails, they should be directed specifically to each professor. Instead of writing just dear sir or dear ma'am or hello or something like this, it should be dear Professor Doctor, so on
Doctor.
and so forth. And then of course the core part, I mean the core competencies, the science behind it. One's profile should be good. It's always competitive. Today it's getting more and more competitive by the day, I would say. So that the core aspect should all be in order. Having good references is very important. This is also something that I found in my journey, and this was the only PhD application I actually made, because I really wanted to do this.
Good.
And I didn't even apply for the entrance exams in India to do MD or MS. So
Okay.
I would suggest people, if they are convinced with the path they're going, and if it is doable, stick to it. It can take some time, but things will happen.
Okay, I think that's the word. Wonderful. Very, very interesting. And thanks for those points. It's, I think, probably prospective students, it will be helpful. So let's come to the German part. You are here in Hanover, and you did your PhD. And let's say, apart from a medical doctor, you are a doctor. So, like, say, Dr. Med, one can call it. And
it's actually PhD. So I didn't do a doctor med. It's like Dr.
okay.
Rare Nut. So it's
No,
PhD.
right. It's a PhD. So now, while in Germany you did your PhD, what was it like? I mean, still you have been closely associated with Manipal. You are going every year there, and this Manipal Lindau conference and other things you are associated with. I have two things. One, what's that you learned now you are in Germany? I mean, not in terms of, we will come to that, the area of research, but I'm more focusing on at this moment in terms of how the research is done. Yeah, that part. And connecting with your alma mater in Mahe regularly, what's that you are bringing from here, the other side also, in terms of let's say it's not only the terms of resources, but also in terms of the knowledge, in terms of know how things are being done. How is it? How was it in the last 3-4 years of your journey?
Mhm. Yeah, this is I think a very interesting point to discuss, because collaboration is key. We know that now it might be any field, nothing happens without collaboration. So, firstly, as to what I learned in Germany, the working style is different, the culture is different, I would say. I would also say there are certain pros and cons in each country. So, it's not that it's 100% package everywhere, but what I really admired is the focus here, the focus and the intensity with which research happens. So again, I mean, absolutely no disrespect to institutions and scientists in India. There are people who are doing great work, absolutely, including in Manipal, including at my alma mater, and also other places in India. But what we can really learn from the Germans is the focus with which the research is done. So they're very focused. There is even the ethical aspect is excellent. So the students working are exclusively mostly working on the research projects. If they are working on something else, most of the times they're getting paid separately for that. So the remuneration, I know that one does science for the fun of it, or for the getting the scientific objective, but as daily life, even the remuneration is important. So we cannot avoid that factor. So this is something, there is a lot of difference between India and Germany. And here, although there are different pay grades, it's also quite good, I would say, generally. Other than that, the approach, so for example, in Germany, to become a professor, as you already know, you need a habilitation, which requires at least 15 publications to be done, 8 out of them to be first author or last author, so on and so forth. So the style in academics is quite different in Germany. It is more intensive. Of course, I don't expect that in India so many doctors will be able to do so much intensive research, because simply we have much more clinical load. We simply have tens or hundreds of times of more patients. But at least if a small percentage of doctors could become clinician scientists, that is something what we can learn from Germany. And this is something, now coming to your second point, we are trying to get these points into the picture since 2017, especially since when we have the Indo-German metabolic meet. So it's focused in the field of inborn errors of metabolism. And every year, not only I, but my Professor Das, also comes to India. And so we are already doing conferences as jointly organized. We are also submitting grants. We are also applying for Indo-German grants, which can help in collaboration, which can help both sides. We can get a lot of good clinical and research material from India in terms of patients. The Indian side can benefit from the cutting edge research that's going on here in Germany. So it's a win-win for both the sides. And apart from this, I'm happy to say that we were also able to facilitate student exchange to some extent. About 4 students from India had come here in Hanover to Germany to do a clinical elective, and 2 students from Germany had gone to India to do a clinical elective. So, what is very interesting for Indian students when they come here is to see the advanced techniques, the research aspect, what is very advanced in Germany. And what is interesting for German students when they go to India is seeing different cases, like, for example, tuberculosis or vitamin D deficiency. They almost don't get to see this in
Yes.
Germany. Whereas in India, they can see a wide spectrum of diseases. And also, what the students, this is the feedback from the students that I got who went there, they said, in India, we were fascinated as to how the doctors diagnose things clinically
Mm.
without doing many tests. You are picking up things like this. I mean, the pediatrician doesn't need to order 10 tests. One test is more than enough. And actually, that's all the patient can afford. So I told them that this is one of the big reasons the patient cannot afford spending 10,000 rupees simply on one visit. It's not possible. So they were fascinated by this aspect. So I think both the countries, if we have a very healthy exchange of science, we have a lot to learn and experience from each other. So I think the more more Indian diaspora come here and keep ties with their home, with their alma mater, the more good we can do together. And I mean, Bala, you are facilitating a lot of international and Indo-German collaboration. So I think that's great. And the more we have this, I think the more benefit we will see. Both sides will see the benefit.
Right, absolutely. I fully agree with you. I think it takes time. I think that's the crucial part of it. Sometimes people lose patience because sometimes they want something happening very fast. Actually, cooperation and collaboration, it's based on trust, and trust means it takes time to build that trust. So I think it's not like, because the system is different, both sides, people need to be convinced that their quality is same and the people are reliable and many other things. But I'm sure there are a lot of examples, and I'm sure. So Partha, explain to us, what is your field of research? What exactly you are working on? Let's say you can, of course, explain scientifically, but also a little bit also, for those who want to see your video, not necessarily being a medical doctor or a biologist, but just because this interview is not only about that, so they can also bit of understand what's all about your researches.
Sure. So I will try to explain it as well as possible, and as simple as possible. So this is something what my father told me, that Peter Drucker, a famous business management expert from USA, had said that if one has understood something, one should be able to tell it to a 10-year-old
Right.
student or a 10-year-old child. So my field of interest, my field of research broadly is neuroscience, and I got my PhD in the field of neuropediatrics and metabolic disorders. What I was working on is the understanding the mechanism of action of ketogenic diet. So a lot of people now today know about what is ketogenic diet, but in simple terms, it is a diet which induces something called as ketosis in the body. So a diet which contains a lot of fat, about 70 to 80% fat, about only 10% carbohydrates and 10% proteins, or even lesser. So this is the composition of the diet. So to give you a very simple example, a ketogenic diet is something, if I've taken a pan and I want to make some vegetable in it, but I want to make it ketogenic, I add maybe 3 or 4 or 5 full tablespoons of butter or ghee to it, and I would add maybe 2 pieces of broccoli, for example. That would then become ketogenic diet,
Okay.
and maybe some seeds. So this is something. This is a very simplified example,
That's
and I
right.
might be wrong in terms of the percentage of calories and so on and so forth here. But this is the kind of a ketogenic diet. So basically, one has to avoid bread, one has to avoid rice, one has to avoid also eat very less pulses, so on and so forth. So it's a lot of ghee, lot of butter, lot of margarine, and so on and so forth.
Certainly
Then,
not
so
for those who
what
come
we
from
did was
India.
we focused on a specific group of enzymes called yes,
Go
yes.
ahead.
I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult. I mean, I'm a vegetarian myself, and I have tried to do this diet, and it's difficult. It's very hard. But I have to say, I have to give an example here. There is a dietitian in Pune who I met. She has designed a ketogenic diet specifically for vegetarians, and this is really good. This is really effective. So I think there are a lot of new things happening in this area now.
Okay, go ahead.
So the ketogenic diet is basically, it was invented in the early 1900s. It's basically used to treat epilepsy, to treat seizures, or what simply people call fits in English also. And apart from this, this is used to treat metabolic disorders. This is being tried now to treat cancer, some forms of cancer. Then people are also on an experimental basis trying to use ketogenic diet to treat neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease. So it has a wide range of applications. What the public knows generally is that ketogenic diet is being used for weight loss.
Mhm.
So that's a whole another discussion, and I will not go into the depth of it. But this is also one of the things that people are commonly using the ketogenic diet for. And so this is the story of what is the ketogenic diet and what is it used to treat. The problem is, despite the ketogenic diet now being used for 100 years, a century, we don't know how exactly it works.
Mm.
So there are many proposed theories, there are many proposed mechanisms of action. Some of the theories have some evidence, but we do not have concrete evidence of how exactly what happens in the body after we consume the ketogenic diet. We see that the seizures go down, we see that the patients are getting cured, but why is it happening? So as we know that when any drug is developed, we first we first need to see how the drug is working, and then they develop the drug, and then it is given to animals, then to humans, the clinical trials, so on and so forth. In ketogenic diet, it happened the other way around. The ketogenic diet was given as a treatment, it worked, but till today we don't know exactly how it works. So this was my thesis title, understanding the mechanism of action of ketogenic diet. And in this we explored whether the ketogenic diet in neuronal cells, so I did not work on patients, but I worked on the neurons, the brain cells of mice in the lab. This is what I worked on. And we fed them the ketogenic diet, and then we observed a group of enzymes called sirtuins, and we studied the energy metabolism of the cell. So as people might remember from the school days, mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, what it is called, we studied the enzymes in the mitochondria, and we also studied the lipids present in the cell. So the lipids make a lot of membranes of the cells and other constituents. So this is what we studied in my thesis, and we found that the ketogenic diet alters sirtuins, the mitochondrial metabolism, and lipids in neuronal cells. So this was the outcome. So in a very very simplified manner, I would say that we are maybe a very very tiny step further to understanding how the ketogenic diet works. So
Yeah.
if later people are interested, they can contact me and I can send them the publications
Yeah, like
that we
most
have.
of the research is right. Everybody does a little bit at some point of time, somewhere the full picture
Yes,
is emerging, right? Um,
yes. It's a big jigsaw puzzle,
yeah,
and maybe we made a small part.
wonderful, wonderful part. I think that's really, really you explained that. I think as simplified as possible. And coming to the last minutes of the dialogue, so what's up for you? What's in front of you? What's your roadmap? How it's going, or what's something that you have already planned? How it looks like?
Mhm. Yes, so that's I think in principle, I think I'm taking one step at a time. So the first step was getting into MBBS, then the step was becoming a clinician scientist, which by God's grace today I could finish my PhD and become a clinician scientist. Now I'm looking to further specialize in the clinical field, which would either be pediatrics or genetics or maybe related to neurology. So right now I'm in the process of getting my medical license in Germany. So it's a bit of time taking process, but one has to submit a lot of documents and so on and so forth. So this process is currently going on, and I hope to do a residency, a specialization, or what they call in German the Facharztweiterbildung in one of these fields, and then continue doing some research on the side, and continue a lot of collaboration. I'm keen on doing a lot of collaborations. Getting and Indo-German is the start, but maybe later on even involving other countries.
Why
So
not?
Indo-German, because I come from India and I'm in Germany, so that's the natural path. But also at the international stage, and what I said in the very beginning, that I may have taken arts, and one of the subjects could have been political science. I actually, in the future, after maybe I establish myself in the field, I'm thinking of even going into policy making or politics, and it would be great if I can work on a bigger scale to impact the health system, the science and technology system, and the education system of our country. And this is something. It's a very it's like looking at the North Star right now. It's far away, but that is a path which I would love to take if given an opportunity.
Wishing you all the very best. I hope that you can
Thank you.
get to the place where you want to, or the things that you would like to achieve. Maybe we can have a dialogue at some point of time together with Dr. Tanya Joshi as well. So I think both of you can also share a lot of things, and also maybe from her perspective, one can also see, because though she's also coming from the medical background, of course, dentistry and further, and I know she's also working. So maybe we can do a kind of Germany from the eyes of Indians, something like that, So maybe one can look at it in a different way to see what it is. Um, yeah, thanks very much, Partha, for this. I think it has been, we are already an hour. I mean, it went like that, there are so many things we discussed. We will post this after editing, and we'll also get back to you, and then for the public view through the Consulate General of India. So thank you once again, and thanks a lot
Thank you very much for inviting me to this session.
Absolutely, and it's our privilege, and thank you very much. And to the viewers as well, thank you again, those who are watching this, and we look forward to you in the next edition of Nisarg as well. Thank you, all the best. Partha, all the best. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.